Okay. Move on to the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial items to be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed for later discussion. 3A, approval of the minutes of July 30th. 3B, review of the director's monthly timesheets for July. 3C, ratify claim summary 641. 3D, report on monthly investment transactions for July 2025. 3E, approval of a grazing lease on Hogan Dam Road. 3F, Region 3 election ballot for the Associated California Water Agencies, Michael Minkler, General Manager. 3G, approval of the easement of copper transmission pipeline. 3H, approval of purchase of a Caterpillar backhoe. Is there any items to be removed, or can I have a motion for acceptance?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to new business for a report on the Real Estate Review Committee. All right, Radaman is not here. Russ, is this something you're gonna do?
I wasn't warned about this, but I certainly can. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right, well, focusing the attention of this memo from August 27th, you'll see that the district owns a home that is next to our treatment facilities in the Copper or in Valley Springs water treatment area. It was empty, and so we toured the property. We considered selling it, or we considered recommending selling it or continuing to rent it, but a significant amount of money was needed to improve the property and make it rentable. We had to improve the septic system, and some plumbing stuff and some electrical stuff was done. But we got initially we had a renter in there. The circumstances changed, but they moved out, and now the property is bringing in the handsome sum of $2,200 a month. So we'll, in just a few months, we will be able to regain our
2,200 or 2,000.
2,200. It's a single family residence. Yeah. So we will recoup our investment and or the investment in the repairs fairly quickly. Okay, the 55 acres that is adjacent to the Valley Springs PUD, we went back and forth and had some discussions with the county. We even thought, like the first bullet point talks about the possibility of having a mitigation bank for species preservation, and that we had a report done on that, and it didn't seem very feasible to do that. So we decided it wasn't a good candidate for having use for that purpose. And we have just approved a lease agreement, which at $50 an acre, that's pretty good lease income. And I think the grass must be very high there, because I don't get nearly that amount.
That's a good deal.
Okay, and then the 15 acres up here on the Highway 49. We've had a for sale sign on it after having considered a possibility of having a potential solar array there. A company approached us, and that didn't go very far. Those discussions. The property had been added to a surplus list by the board back in 2010, as it shows. We have it listed for $399,000. The listing was lowered to $370,000 after a meeting with the real estate agent. And there was an interesting map that was presented at the last meeting that we had on this, where the improvements, the highway improvements adjacent or out in front of that property is it shows that there's a roundabout that is scheduled to go there. So it will, it won't solve the problem for us because we have built this building instead. But one of the challenges was highway access and the left turn lane and all those problems, it appears, will go away with this new highway improvement. So it should be a more valuable property in the future. So we decided to hang on to it, but continue to list it at this 370, but we're not going to lose any money on that. Okay, under the topic of many properties reviewed, we had 16 unused CCWD properties. Most of them were determined to be too small or unusable to market for sale. There's one old redwood tank that the committee requested staff to develop a plan to have the tank removed. There was, since Scott is on the Historic Society, he may share some better information about this, but apparently there's some historic ramifications that would take place if we tore it down. So it's likely it's going to stay there. 2 properties needed to be added to the budget for removal of infrastructure for possible sale in the future. And the 2 properties that particular bullet point refers to are the ones on Kiva Drive over in Copperopolis. One has as you may recall, has a large water tank there, have live water pipes coming into that tank, and certain challenges would be presented by taking that structure and those tanks off, but we determined that it needs to be done, and I think there's a couple $100,000 I think was allocated to do the necessary removal of our facilities off those 2 properties, and we'll see what happens after that, see if there's any interest in buying them by another party. And then the West Point private sale, there is a piece of property that is a very, very small segment. I think a lot line adjustment is going to be required to pull this off or to actually consummate the sale. But one of the nearby property owners has approached us about doing this lot line adjustment so that it will improve our situation. Is that right, Damon? And also be a significant improvement to his property, and he's giving fair market value for that property. So we didn't find a whole lot of money buried anywhere, but we were still kicking the can down the road, as they say.
All right, is that it? Does the board have any questions?
Yes, what was the historic, was it the tank historic?
Yeah, it's a redwood tank dating back a good many years ago, about the time Jeff was born. So,
Okay. Not that
Before the county was put together?
yeah,
It's not active?
no, hasn't been active for years.
Well, what's the liability?
Maybe Damon knows a lot more about that than I do.
We take these tanks down all the time. I don't know why that.
So
They're
there was a
valuable.
hazard mitigation grant that was executed to replace 5 of our redwood tanks with bolted steel. And within that grant, there was a historical assessment of all of the tanks. And so part of the funding was built around the fact that we would save one of the tanks as kind of an artifact for historic preservation, because they were all older than 45 years, which makes them subject to SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. And so this was kind of the, what's the word? This was the compromise in order to be able to take all of the other tanks down, was that we would keep one. However, there was a discussion about taking this tank down and then building a smaller one for reference for the Historic Society. And so it looks like that's ultimately what we'll end up doing. The cloudiness is where we keep it. Can we keep it on site, or do we need to bring it down to the museum?
And structurally, it's sound, it's not a danger to anyone?
Well, currently it is, but as these tanks dry up, they fall in on themselves. And so then it becomes a danger, right?
Yeah.
And so,
So it's holding water now.
it appears watertight. We haven't assessed whether or not there's water in it. It is hydraulically disconnected from our distribution system. So, it is intact. However, I think, moving forward, the challenge is obviously the financial impact between who's going to take it down and who's going to erect it and where they're going to do that and how we're going to do that essentially for free. And so that's part of the challenge that the real estate ad hoc committee went through, is assessing this tank and how we're going to do this. The Historic Society doesn't necessarily have the cash to spend to demo it. However, if we're able to take a piece out, so to speak, and sell the rest, maybe we can fund this operation. So that's really kind of what we're looking at.
Okay. Anything else?
Sure.
Anything for the public? Anything for the public?
Davidson, can you hear me?
Who is this? Who's this?
Michael. Sorry, I should identify myself. So I'm sorry I can't be there today in person, but I am joining online on my way back from CSDA conference. And I just want to acknowledge what have affectionately become known as the Property Brothers, but the Ad Hoc Property Committee, Director Thomas and Director Ratterman, I think really kind of lit a fire for staff to make sure that even if we didn't necessarily find a windfall here, that we had an organized approach to managing all the properties that we have. We got the Jenny Lind house back out we're generating revenue there again. And we have established a relationship with a very good local realtor who's helping us with some of the other properties once we get the infrastructure dealt with. And there's a few other properties that we still might be able to sell once we resolve some outstanding issues. But it's been a good process.
Right? Is there any actual public? Is there any public comment regarding this? Okay, nobody online? Okay. All right, we'll move on to discussion action regarding CCWD response of a Calaveras County grand jury. Is that you, Kelly?
Yes, good afternoon. That is me. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the most recent grand jury report. As most of you know, I'm sure in 2023 and 2024, the Calaveras grand jury did investigate Calaveras County Water District, mostly related to the 5-year rate plan. That investigation was entitled "Still Waters Run Deep." And then in June 13th, 2025, the grand jury issued a follow-up report, this one called "The Cost of Water." There was a couple different findings there. The first finding was really just associated with the first report, saying that it was satisfied with, with us complying with 218 and that. But in the second finding for this new report was the grand jury is satisfied that Calaveras County Water District communicated planned rate changes and conducted public meetings according to the requirements of Proposition 218. However, although Calaveras County Water District has taken steps to improve upon its public outreach efforts, the extent of the public outcry to the recent rate increase demonstrates that improvement to those outreach efforts should be ongoing. The response that they are requiring is that the Calaveras grand jury recommends that the Calaveras County Water District continue to evaluate and improve upon its public outreach efforts. Such efforts should be reviewed annually at a minimum. The first annual review being conducted by December 31st, 2025. So the required response is from the board. They're requiring that the board of directors is required to respond to the civil grand jury report by September 9th, 2025. And staff has prepared the attached draft response and seeks your feedback on that response. So I'm hoping you guys were able to look at the response. We tried to capture, kind of recapture what the outreach strategy was during that time and since that time as well. But again, this response is actually coming from the board. as opposed to in the last grand jury, there was different responses from staff and different levels throughout the organization.
Okay, does the board have any questions?
I read through it and it looks fine to me.
Yeah, in the packet too, digital version, I included some of the links to some of the presentations or some of the information on the website where folks maybe couldn't find that information just by genuinely not knowing where it was located. All the information from that rate study is still on the site and it's still available. All the presentations that were given with explanations to the presentation. So if you see the digital version, there is highlighted blue links where folks can, look for that information.
Is it more a matter of there aren't a lot of people looking for the information? I mean, we do keep track of visits to our website. Is it, and I know that the numbers have increased, but I think the last time you gave a report, the time spent on the website is pretty short. People don't stay there very long.
Yeah, unfortunately, the website's still fairly new. It's just a little over a year old, the newer website, which gave me that ability to look on the back end. So I don't have data from that time period from the rate study. I don't have that information. So I can't tell you how many folks, looked at certain things. But, a lot of people on our website aren't really looking at that information. I mean, our two most viewed sites is links to the portal and job opportunities. Those are by far the two pages that people are looking at the most, by quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully with these links, folks can, if they really want to go back through all that stuff, they're more than welcome to. Again, it'll be on there forever. We don't, we're not going to take it down, all the rationale and all the explanation. And one thing we tried to capture in the, in that response was, we did go far above and beyond what 218 requires. And we just wanted to kind of remind that this was discussed at several board meetings, several finance committee meetings, special meetings, town halls.
Okay. So does this take a vote?
Yeah, I mean, basically will be a response from the board. And, so the President Davidson, you'll have to sign this response and then I can send it to the grand jury by the deadline of September 9th.
All right, well, there's no action item on here, so, or it doesn't say,
Discussion action.
pardon?
I think it says action.
Does it? I didn't get my agenda, so, all right, do we have a motion to accept the response?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any public comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
If I could make just a short comment about that. But when all the rate hearings were going on and all the furor was occurring, it became really crystal clear to me that there was a certain faction that they actually told me, so there's nothing you can tell me that will change my mind. I know you're cooking the books. And I said, well, I can prove to you that you're wrong about that. And no, I don't want to hear it. So, I mean, hopefully there will be people that if they have the proper motivation, they could go to the website and see for themselves that everything was done properly. But we can't fool everybody, can we?
I'm not trying to fool anybody.
No, I know that. But it was very interesting conversation that I had with one gentleman about that.
All right, so anyway, that item's closed. Okay, we'll move on to approval of P2409 relicensing Phase 2 HDR contract. Andrew?
So this is going to be me again. Andrew is up actually right now at the FERC inspections. It started yesterday. I was with Andrew yesterday. Yesterday we inspected McKay's, Beaver Creek and Clairville. Great inspection. Dove in a little deeper and really actually inspected more of the abutments too. So that was something new for me. I thought that was really, really interesting. Today, Andrew was part of the tour on the upper reservoirs, at NCPA's upper reservoirs like Alpine, Union, and Utica, and inspecting the North Fork Diversion Dam. tomorrow we will be inspecting Spicer. And this is just a normal yearly inspection. So this is Andrew's item, but I'm going to present it. This is again for the approval for our phase 2 of the next, basically this next phase. We've utilized HDR for phase 1. They've really set us in a good direction for this relicensing process. This phase 2 is really going to start encompassing a big portion of it's going to be the pad, the pre-application document, which we've already started with, but this is going to really, this next contract is going to bring us into submitting the NOI and the pad. We do have Chuck Bertucci here with HDR, and we also have Jim Lynch online if you guys have any questions about this next phase. And again, what we're asking the board today is to approve this phase 2 contract, which would go through June 30th of 2027. Again, the pad will be scheduled to roughly submit it by probably August of 2026. And again, that's going to be kind of the big effort between now and then. But we're right on that beginning. I mean, we're not at the beginning, but by the end of 2025, there's going to be much, the public meetings are going to be starting and some of the stakeholder engagement. And so we're really going to be ramping up very, very shortly here.
Okay, does the board have any questions?
Quick question for Kelly, and I asked Jeff, I just felt like we need to say something about this. This is a no bid contract for over $1.5 million. Can you, I've read through the material, but can you just let us know our justification for doing that? So we're clear on the record.
Yeah, and I can jump in there and take that one, Kelly, unless you want to.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, we touched on it in the staff report, and I appreciate you raising it, Director Garamendi, because I want us to be transparent about this. That is really largely due to the very project specific experience that this HDR team brings. And I think we mentioned Jim Lynch's experience with the project in the staff report. Another part of that team is Randy Bowersox as a sub with Gannett Fleming, who managed the project for NCPA for 15 years. And so this project team has very specific knowledge, in-depth knowledge of the North Fork project, in addition to the decades of relicensing experience that Chuck Bertucci and other members of the team bring. It really, what sets it apart, this team, from what anybody else could potentially provide, is that project specific experience on the North Fork project. And so we felt like there isn't, there are only a handful of firms that really specialize in this kind of work to begin with, and none of them would be able, some of them might be able to compete with relicensing experience in general. None of them would be able to compete with the project specific experience this team brings. And we've already seen how beneficial that is for us. Jim and Randy both being able to point us in the right direction about, why certain decisions were made back in the 80s or 90s, or over the last, 15 years when over the 15-year period when Randy managed the project. That's just invaluable for us and for this team. And we did go out and do some due diligence and make sure that the rates are competitive. And so we're comfortable on that front. But that's really what sets this project team apart from any other potential firm that could bid. And so the language in our purchasing policy is, I'm not quoting it exactly, but something to the effect of, if there would be no value in going out to bid, then subject to board approval, we can do a no bid contract for something like this.
Okay, I'm good with that. As long as we're sorry about that. Getting our feedback in your budget. Okay,
He muted it now, I think.
okay, so yeah, okay, so we're good. As long as we can justify that, we're good, no problem. Just worry about down the road.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, there's
Can
no
I get
doubt.
Taking a motion for acceptance?
Yes, I'll make the motion, but I also want to disclose to the board, my son is a junior engineer, nowhere related to this project. HDR is a large company, but he works for HDR. I do not believe there's a conflict.
All right.
I disclosed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do you have any further questions? Anybody? Nope. Public comment? Okay, please, poll the board.
Director Robertson,
Yes.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Garamendi,
Yes.
President Davidson.
Yes. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, monthly operation. Better known as picture day.
Yeah, it has a different connotation than it did back in the old days.
Good afternoon again, directors. Once again, it was an eventful July for CCWD's operations team. I do want to highlight, I'm waiting. I do want to highlight though, the Jenny Lynn distribution crew made 51 service line repairs in the month of July and water main repairs. So that's blowing down on the main, putting full circle clamp on a leaking service line, going down to the next failure, blowing down on it, put another full circle clamp on a leaking service line, and then fixing large main breaks all at the same time. So all the while, the utility crew is methodically going down to Baldwin, replacing all of these aged service lines. So the amount of work these guys can pull off in a month is just, it's impressive. And we're starting off with the Ebbets Pass distribution crew. And what their work does is it highlights the fact that while you're also doing service lines, the guys have a whole host of other work they got to do. Oh, perfect. Okay, so here's, good old fashioned service line repair. Diving into what can often cause a leak. Tree roots, massive amounts of tree roots can restrict a pipe and pop it open. And the image on the right just illustrates when our guys can listen and identify the location of a leak, they can be really kind of, they can pretty much pinpoint where the repair is going to take place and minimize impact to the road damage. And that's what you see in the image on the right. So here's death of service line by PG&E power pole auger. I also want to highlight that there's 365 plus underground service alerts throughout the district in July. Most of those are PG&E. PG&E is just there's, I would say, anywhere between 4 and 5 projects happening at the same time related to undergrounding or system hardening for PG&E. Many of those are happening on the Ebbets Pass, and they can wreak havoc for our crews because there's obviously impacts to different utility infrastructure when those guys get to work. And so oftentimes we have to stop whatever it is we're doing, jump and go make the repair. A lot of the times PG&E is at fault because the utility was accurately located. Sometimes our marks are off because the service line, rather than going straight, did one of these. So it's kind of a constant back and forth with PG&E. Here's an interesting one, galvanized repair. So this is associated with the assessment of the presence of lead in a water system. So galvanized to galvanized connections historically raise a concern because at some point in time, lead solder may have been used in the plumbing of that service line. We completed that assessment associated with lead last year, and we found minimal to no impact related to lead service lines for our distribution systems. And so when we encounter one of these, we replace it with polypropylene. Here you go. This is the kind of the continuation of that galvanized service line. This highlights, work happens at all manner of the day and night. We have crews, somebody's on call 24/7, 365. And if the work requires it, we will go out at all hours of the day and make it happen. So you can see putting the curb stop on the water meter. You can see the crimper below the curb stop in the image on the right, below the pipe wrench. Here you go with fire hydrant rebuild on the pass. Something that we talked about at the engineering committee a couple months ago is fire hydrant maintenance. Happens in all distribution systems. So you can see that this is the breakaway coupling on the fire hydrant was broken. Image on the left, you're going to cover that opening with some plastic, and then you're going to order repair parts or go back to the shop and get those parts and then put the new repair coupling on with the fire hydrant back. Hats off to the guys, and then you're gonna go flush the system. Here you go. Paving over valves is a constant battle for us. A lot of the conversation we have tying in with Kevin's team in the engineering department for the Jenny Lind A to B project is when we go to replace service lines. What are those shutdowns going to look like? Are there any valves that could have been buried that we're going to need to go find because they bury them? And so if we don't have the resources to go out and monitor every repave or micro-servicing effort, invariably somebody's going to just pave right over something. And so when the guys have a free moment, they go out and they're like, I know there's a valve over here. Let me get my metal detector. Let me get my ground penetrating radar equipment and find it. Here's some other work, pressure reducing valves. We have hundreds of pressure reducing valves up on the Ebbets Pass. They require maintenance. They need to be dewatered, and the pilot controls always need to be rebuilt. And so here's an image of dewatering one of those PRV vaults and then rebuilding the control, the CRD in this case. So a reducing control, pilot control valve, which allows that big valve to operate effectively. You see the spring and the washer in Bill's hand in the image on the right. And then the new spring in the image on the right there. And then the top of the bonnet for the small pilot control in the image on the left. Spot flushing, as we all talk about, there's this whole, I think some have coined it the regulatory circular wheel, fire protection, battling water quality. So oftentimes we're compelled to flush to ensure that water is of optimal quality. So the image on the right shows you an automatic flusher. So it's connected to a hydrant, it's on a timer, and it'll just dump water. So our guys have those placed in areas where it's not going to negatively impact the public, and they'll move those around periodically throughout the year so we don't wear out our welcome. So this is an interesting one. 2 repairs, I think at least 2 repairs during July on Dunn Road. This is the 2-inch repair. So you can see that sometimes our folks will go through and take an expansion coupling in the image on the right and make the repair with that. And I want to highlight the image on the left. They're potholing to find out where it is they're going to need to make the work happen. And then here we go on the image on the right. Sometimes you'll Romac or connect, couple a section of pipe in, depending, it all depends on the amount of deflection and the nature of the failure, the amount of work that the guys are going to do. So the image on the right is one fashion, and this image is another fashion. You can see that that white section of pipe is soaking up a fair amount of deflection there on the pipe. And then the image on the left is another one of those Romac to Romac repairs. And then the backfill, temporary asphalt in the image on the right. And at some point in time, we'll coordinate with the county, get in there and repave all of that. I want to highlight this Milton Road service because this is something that we talk about throughout Calaveras County. This is the nature of the backfill material on all of our service line connections. This one is really interesting because that is just a pile of rocks. And so over time, those pile of rocks are going to wear a hole in that service line. And then when our guys make the repair, they're going to backfill that with AB, class 2 AB. And those are the rocks they pulled out of that one. Wow. So it's just, there's like a river bottom on the bottom under there living on top of a service line. Super popular. These kind of repairs are the kind that our guys really like to involve themselves in. You can see that giant rock in the image on the left. We usually find the smallest guy and ask him to pick that thing up and get it out of the way. But yeah, there's a lot that's associated with these repairs. Another 2-inch repair on Jenny Lind. Incidentally, the board approved budgetary item to provide money to replace. There's about 24 2-inch cul-de-sacs in the Rancho Calaveras area. I think we replaced 4 of them last year. So we'll continue with that effort with the construction crew because they are a large source of issues for the Jenny Lind system. Here's one right here, 2-inch repair. You can see the backfill material in the image on the left, the pickup tube for the vacuum truck, the air compressor, and then the amount of deflection in the image on the right where they're going to connect to the existing piping. Here's a service line repair in West Point, and this highlights that in West Point, we don't have a vacuum truck, we have a vacuum trailer. So this allows our crews to be a little bit more nimble and get into some smaller spaces with that trailer. And the image on the left, incidentally, that trailer was on the cover of the Aqua news magazine last month. So it's that trailer's seen a lot of airtime in recent months. You see the service on the left blowing water right at the connection to the water main being kind of covered by a shovel. And this is a lot of the work that our construction crew did up in West Point during this month, is replace old sample stations with new sample stations. And you can imagine if you have a bad sample, what the possible impact could be for the whole distribution system. So it's really important that the plumbing and the piping is sanitary and clean, and sample stations are the best way to go for that. So they have little doors, and they'll have like a 1/4-inch port piece of brass or copper tubing. And then the guys can disinfect that, and it's away from the dirt. It's not, a hose bib this far off the ground where somebody has to get a back T sample and try not to get any dirt in there, because dirt will cause a false positive. And so I want to say they replaced about 5 of these sample stations in that month. So hats off to the guys. This is an illustration of the work that our construction crew can do. So this is a lower access road to the Hunter's Water Treatment Plant. Super talented crew that not only do they install the road, but they install drainage, culvert piping. They do fabulous work, all manner of work. Director Thomas talked about work associated with the old water treatment plant and raw water conveyance pump station in Copper on the Kiva. A lot of that work will happen with this crew. They are always up to something. So this is site cleanup up at the Vallecito yard. This is our electrical crew, super talented crew. There's one thing that I've highlighted with PG&E in the recent weeks is the fact that the Copper Cove electricity is just simply unreliable. And PG&E really needs to initiate projects that provide more reliable power for that community. Because when it's 105 degrees outside, it's just really unfortunate that everybody anticipates that sooner or later, sometime today, the power is going to go out, and CCWD is no stranger to that either. And so a lot of the work that's highlighted here with the electrical crew happened in Copper. So this is associated with lift station pumps. So there's overload relays on those pumps, and they will trip and they'll get old over time. And they won't necessarily latch in strong enough and allow that pump, especially when it's trying to push a bunch of grease and there's some debris in the sewage, it'll trip those overloads. And so our guys found at this time that originally the overloads that were installed were the wrong size. So they replaced the overloads with the accurate size and back in business. This is at our B tank site. So this is an active construction site, but one that also experiences power fails on Moss and Copperopolis. And there's always this debate between CCWD and PG&E relative to the infrastructure of whose issue it was. And so our electricians and PG&E, I must highlight, work really well together in Copper. And so this was a case of we both had an issue. Our automatic transfer switch had failed, and PG&E had an issue up on the pole. So while PG&E is in the bucket truck looking at their issue on the pole, our electricians are putting on their arc flash suit and assessing what's going on at the bus bar inside of the pump station. So super fashionable picture of our electrician, Tony Brolio, who does fabulous work. Hats off to Tony. Here's some more of that work. So another part of the crew is troubleshooting what's going on the leads. And then the HMI, sometimes you might see in the claim summary purchases of HMIs. These HMIs get blasted by the sun and they periodically fail. And a lot of the time, HMIs are our only way to interface with a pump station recipe. So what time does the pump kick on? At what level does it kick off? When does the secondary pump kick on? So there's a whole host of things that go into that. More work associated with that B tank electrical work. And then finally, this is often what a person sees first thing in the morning when they come into work and they're on call and they get that call for a service line leak on so-and-so street. They drive up to that.
That was in Yellowstone.
It could be. Yeah, it could be Yellowstone. But I would venture a guess that that's Rancho Calaveras.
So all the lines we saw, they weren't originally bedded with sand or anything that
That's correct.
And you're doing that now or what?
That's right. Yes. So when we replace or repair, we put in class 2AB as our engineering specification, and that's what we use. Yep, exactly right.
And then for the issue of roots and the HDPE pipe, how do we stop that from happening again in the future? So roots grow.
So generally, root intrusion can be difficult. It's usually finding water somehow. So if we replace the section of line with HDPE or some sort of polypropylene or whatever we use, if it's watertight and we cut those roots back, generally they're not going to restrict or constrict the pipe anymore because they're not finding any water. Usually what happens is there's a coupling, there's a tap or a service, there's something there that's just tripping a little bit of water and it's going to find it. And then it's going to just, it's calling all of its friends. Hey, all you roots, come over here. We're going to wrap ourselves around this. However, though, we do encounter situations where there's just naturally occurring groundwater or there's water flowing through that area. And then that's a problem. And what we usually do is if you cut those roots back far enough, we might pull a tree out. We do something to give us years, to buy us years. Yeah. That often involves, working with the property owner. It's not uncommon for us to knock on somebody's door and write them a letter and ask them, hey, are you okay? There's this 15-foot, small bull pine tree out here by your water meter. Are you okay with us if we just cut it down? And that way it'll protect both our system and yours. And usually folks are pretty okay with that.
I've heard of those arc suits before, but they look like they could save a life or two.
Absolutely. Right. Yep. Double gloves, leather gloves, rubber gloves, suit, the helmet, the whole bit. Yeah. It's great.
Kind of water pressure would cause a geyser like that. That's
110, 120.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Should have seen the blowout on Highway 4.
Oh yeah. That was a
good one.
that was a good one. That was a good one.
That was our water.
Yeah, there's boulders like that out in the middle of the street when it blew.
Yeah, that was a PG&E CCWD water main versus PG&E auger.
I hit the main.
Under pressure,
It hit the main.
hit the main.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah,
Traffic stop.
move some boulders. Yeah.
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 That's the thing, when you see some of the backfill that they did, they built the Rancho, Boise Cascade built it in the 60s and 70s, but they weren't hauling any gravel anywhere. They were just backfilling, and so many times you'll see big boulders. Even there was a repair there by the A tank when they started doing that. I looked in the stuff they're taking out are just huge boulders that they had, broken up and just put it right back on top of the pipe.
That's crazy.
Well, there was their own development, there was nobody to inspect it.
Wild West.
Does PG&E compensate us if they've
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So they said, we send them a bill for our actual hours served. And they pay us.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. External Affairs Report, Kelly?
Wow, up here a lot today. Good afternoon again. All right, here's our external affairs report, August 27th. This is hot off the presses. This is a picture from yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, actually, this picture was taken. Again, this is, from the left abutment. We hiked all the way down it, inspected it. It was really awesome. There was a feature on there that I've never experienced. It was actually a small tunnel into the bedrock to be able to, identify any issues with the abutment itself, with the bedrock itself. So that was something that I've never seen. A lot of hiking yesterday, a lot of ups and downs. You can see that ladder. I'm not even going to call it a ladder. It's like ladders and steps down there on the left side of the picture there. And it's there in the middle. I don't think this picture does it justice, but it does take quite a bit of time to get down that. It's deceiving. Quite a lot of work.
looks like
slippery?
No, it's not slippery. I mean, there is drainage, plumbing there for any kind of seepage in the dam and whatnot. And so there's, some moisture there, but it's a lot of work. And I think there's a few folks in this room right now that have done it too, and I'm sure they'll agree.
Risers look like they're about 12 inches.
Yeah, they're bigger than they look. And then also we toured within the dam too, in the gallery of the dam, going down in the belly, inspecting all of that. This was with FERC and DSOD, and it's really fascinating watching those guys, what they see and what they see that we don't see, and just they take their job very seriously. They're very, very thorough. Lots of pictures, lots of documentation. It's actually quite impressive to see this inspection in progress. And on the ones that I've been to so far, everyone is very much, this facility is in good shape. It is one of the younger hydro facilities in California, that's for sure.
That was FERC's assessment as well.
Yeah. Which brings us to celebrate hydropower. So on August 24th, it was National Hydropower Day. The National Hydropower Association did a really fantastic job in the weeks leading up to it, really just pushing out some different media. It's great too. They make it useful for my job where they put out different content where I can just actually easily use their content to push the message. Me kind of being me, I like to, make it more relevant to our own facilities. But it got some really good traction, and there was a lot of good traffic on social media for that day. It was quite impressive and actually quite inspirational. Which leads us really quick to kind of where we're at with some of our Facebook metrics. You can see on the top, it's the first time we've really been down. Actually, for quite a while now, we've had huge numbers. But that's just on the views. In the last 28 days, we're 3% down than we were from the previous. Interactions, though, we're up by 29%. And our followers continue to, we might get 2 or 3. We got a couple more after the town hall, which was exciting. I'll talk about that in a second. But, I did do that plug at the town hall with our socials and the communication survey. So it was nice to see that evening a few new followers that I'm assuming from that meeting. Same thing with LinkedIn. LinkedIn, we're seeing a lot more our traffic. Again, we don't get huge amounts of followers all the time, but it's a steady rise with 3 new followers. Impressions, up in the 300% as opposed to 28 days ago. So we don't get a lot of comments. You see only 3 comments, but that's 200% increase from before. So little numbers make big percentages sometimes. Back with that town hall meeting, a great town hall meeting. We had 33 folks there from Copperopolis, not including any staff, or some of Mizingo's staff was there, but a really, really great town hall. I thought the dialogue and the conversations were good. Questions were good. It seemed to stay on course. And I think it was a very productive, informative town hall meeting. I've had 2 different homeowners associations contact me with wonderful things to say, saying they would like to invite us to their HOA for something like this. And it was great. There's good material there. Copperopolis, we've done a tremendous amount of work in the last couple of years, and we're about to do a tremendous amount of work in the next few years. So it's really nice to communicate with that community all the amazing work that's being done. Like I said earlier, I tried to, on the agenda, plug our socials just so people can stay, kind of back what we were saying about the grand jury report. This is how people can get the information, on our website. You can see on that image on the right, in the very bottom, there's a join our mailing list. That's always on our website. So you can go on there, put your email on there, and then get, email blasts. So leading up to this town hall, I utilize those email blasts for anyone who had signed up for notifications and construction updates. And again, on our socials, I kept on just continually putting it up on our daily, on our feed daily. So with that communication survey, it's always live on the website too, right there at the top. I was hoping we would get some participation. Nobody filled out the survey after the town hall, but it is a valuable tool to communicate with us. What kind of content would you like? Is our website, what do you think of our website? How do you want this material? Do you want it in the form of a newsletter, or would you rather have content? And surprisingly, a lot of people are asking for things like podcasts or like videos or just different forms of content. I'm starting to see that change, but there's a still substantial amount of people that want, newsletters and things like that. A lot of people are into the town halls. but I haven't got a response on that communication survey for quite a while, so please let people know that it's available. It's a good way for us to, stay in touch with the community and learn how they like to be communicated with. The Rotary, that was just a couple weeks ago, August 14th. That was at the Murphy's Hotel, a great event. I was pretty excited. I talked to, I think it was Fred.
Fred's the president.
Fred was the president. He assured me that all the audio visual would be there, that there'd be a screen and everything. I got there, there was no screen. Thankfully, we all drive around with a screen and a TV in our car, right? And so,
Really?
yeah, I was ready just in case because I was nervous about that. Yeah,
We do have one upstairs.
it was outside this time, yeah, but it worked out great.
It was a great presentation. Thank you.
I find that was a little difficult because I get excited about that topic. And again, I'm talking about decades worth of history and trying to cram it down into 20 minutes. Super hard to do, but so hopefully I'm invited back. We can, elaborate a little bit, because I had to cut quite a bit out to make it fit in that time frame. But a great group. Great. That was just really enjoyable. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Which leads me to the White Pines Park Committee. And so the White Pines Park Committee a couple of months ago asked me to do a presentation because they heard, somehow they heard that the 2024 year in review that we did back in January was great. And they wanted me to give a shorter version of that. They gave me the 20-minute mark as well. So I spoke really fast. I went through it quickly and did it in 20 minutes. I think it was like 21 minutes. And when I was done, their jaws were down and they said, look, we know we told you 20 minutes, but next time just take as long as you need. That was great. So they asked me to come back and give one on the White Pines lake itself and a little bit of the history on the park. And so, where the lake is today was the Blagan Mill. Here's this map that I always show that I just can't get enough of. This is, the water master plan of the early 60s, 59 through 61 is when this map was developed. But White Pines Lake at that time was not even a concept. The concept was Scott's Reservoir, which was downstream on the San Antonio Creek. And that was going to be a 20,000 acre feet reservoir. And, White Pines wasn't even thought of at that time. This was going to be that storage for that part of the Calaveras watershed. Never came about. American Forest Products, when they dismantled the mill, like a lot of the logging outfits and stuff, they wanted to develop. They wanted to create what they've just logged into a development. And so they wanted to develop basically a subdivision stretching from where White Pines is today all the way up to Camp Connell. They had all the plans to do it, but then they were informed that they needed to build a water treatment plant and a sewer system. And both those things are very, very expensive. And they said, no, thank you. And they actually just walked away from the project, evicted all of the White Pines town at one point was like the logging town. That's where all the foremen and the workers, and they evicted pretty much everyone except for a few people. They just said, we're walking away from this. So in 1977, American Forest Products sold that land to CCWD, and then which led to in the 1980s is when CCWD built the sewer system in White Pines and the sewer system all through downtown Arnold. But one of the main reasons why CCWD wanted to purchase that water supply was because at that time we were, North Fork wasn't really feeding water into the Ebbets Pass system. We were still getting water from PG&E through the Utica system at PG&E's at the time. And our 1965 contract required us to have a 30-day backup supply. So there was plans to build a water treatment plant at White Pines. And they even looked at some hydro there. I don't know the capacity, very, very small. There's not a lot of head there, but there was also a report. It went nowhere, but they were looking into even some hydro at that spot. Obviously, White Pines never did build a water treatment facility. Once there was a contract in place and, the North Fork project was going to get built, then there was going to be more water supply for the Ebbets Pass area. Which brings me to the Ebbets Pass Wonderland Association, which when I found out that there was an organization called the Ebbets Pass Wonderland Association, I just thought it was really cool. That was kind of the first group that created the White Pines Park. And so there's a whole bunch more history there. I'm not going to go into it today, but basically December 12th of 1980, see, you know, it was like the Rotary, it was several different organizations approached CCWD because I've heard rumors of that at that time, White Pines was kind of becoming kind of a party spot, kind of a dumping ground where people go dump old cars and washers and all that stuff. The property was getting kind of funky. So CCWD and this White Pines Park Committee, you know, really wanted to create this park. This was brought up in the legal affairs the other day, and so I'm not going to get too much into
Kelly,
details.
Hey, just the White Pine stuff. Is there more detail on that?
Oh, I have a
I could
ton.
email, you and I could get together. I'm curious.
Yeah, I have a ton. I just didn't want to get, I mean,
Yeah. I got you. We're in a meeting. but
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
circle back
yeah.
with you.
But the point to that was just really, you know, and Jeff was with me the other day at the last White Pines Park Committee, and I did not show up with a presentation that time, and they were actually upset that I didn't have something to like entertain them. So I'm not sure what I created there. Like,
They also
But-
told you not to bring one, the bump park. I was thinking, you know, that's what they really wanted.
that's
Another-
another story for another day. Again, I'm not going to get into this. This was brought up. Mia kind of reported on this. This is for that the new Hogan reservoir raw water intake that we just submitted for that application for the section 7001, you know, the 219 for the Army Corps. Just wanted to kind of give a highlight and show what we're talking about here. I've shown some of this old footage before, but this is what the intake for the Jenny Lind treatment plant was prior to 1990. Just those two little, I'm not sure how that worked in there, but that was the intake back in the day. And then of course, too, this was, you know, during 1990, I think it was like 89 through 91 when they did the infiltration gallery that we have now. So here's some great old footage. I always wonder, you know, I love this old footage. It kind of reminds me of when I was a kid. This is what TV looked like when I was a kid. You know, now everything's in high definition. Everything looks so crisp, but I'm wondering what our videos today are going to look like in 30 years, you know? So, or more. Actually, this is more.
Looks like that they diverted the river for that work, huh?
And they did. It's my understanding that they did. Yeah.
That would take 10 years to get that approved.
Yeah. So again, this is a great project. Again, Kevin is here if you guys want to get more in the weeds of it, but I just wanted to kind of show, and my main part for showing this part of the presentation was I really wanted to kind of just show some respect to the folks who wrote letters of support for this. We had a lot of support from our own President Davidson submitted a letter of support. We also had Senator Alvarado Gill, Assemblyman Tangipa, Calaveras Board Supervisor Tofanelli, and the City of Angels Mayor Chimente. They all signed letters of support for our application. The most recent Upper McCallamy River Watershed Authority, unfortunately, you know, I think, you know, Director Garamendi and Davidson, you guys know the great work that UMRA does. But in the last meeting, there was a great tour that I was not able to go to. I went and toured this site last year and was just incredibly impressed by what is going on up there. But one thing that I wanted to showcase was in the last meeting, Richard Sykes gave a specific update from a question that you had at the last meeting. So these are on the slides. This is actually the response to your question. And feel free to jump in, Director Davidson, as you were there on that. But I believe you asked what was some of the costs of prevention as opposed to basically the damages.
Yeah.
And so Richard dove into it. He said it was a little bit harder, you know, to find exact numbers, but this is some of what he came up with, you know. And when you look up at those last sets of bullet points, it's insane. When you look at like the Caldor fire, $1.2 billion in damages, where they thought, you know, some of the suppression efforts could have been maybe in the 271 million, you know. So I think, you know, he was just trying to answer your question as to what are some of, you know, how do we quantify that, some of the suppression efforts versus just dealing with the aftermath of some of these huge fires.
And suppression efforts are the fire breaks or the actual active?
Kind of like some of the work that they're doing. Yeah, like the forest thinning, the mastication, and some of these fuel breaks. These were just astounding numbers that, again, he presented this was part of his
Well, yeah, I'm just
report.
trying to get, I just want the, start talking in real dollars about what's needed, in the forest and that there is, the cost benefit. I mean, it's pretty clear that, this more money, more resources, more projects, whether it's, reducing the, all the study materials that have to go. We spend so much money on reports, that, I mean, at some point you just got to recognize that it's all pretty much the same. And, we should be putting the money into equipment and, manpower. And I just trying to get them to come up with a, the difference in, not the cost of not doing anything or not doing enough is pretty staggering. And we always seem to come up with that. Right?
Yeah, and he tried to put in those first bullets too the context of what's needed. I mean, we need to do some large scale work. I mean,
Well, if you put these numbers, if you could do some simple math here and come up with the actual cost of statewide, and it's gonna be staggering.
yeah,
But we have, we gotta start printing those numbers, at least the preventive. Even if you just do the math on the, just on a per acre basis of the at-risk areas, the critically at-risk areas, put the prevention number and then say, but here's the catastrophic number,
right.
and just so we can show that to legislators so they'll start to fund these projects more.
Yeah, I really wish I could have toured that again. I toured it the last 2 years, and it's just an impressive,
Well, I drove up I had to play golf and trucking for a couple days this week, and I drove up 88, and it just looks so nice where they've rehabbed the forest up there.
yeah,
It's just so much better.
Absolutely.
Even up where my cabin is, I mean, you can barely walk up to the top of the peak up there. I'm at 7,000 feet in the Stanislaus Forest. There's so many huge trees down. You can barely walk through the forest because you got to get over these 5 foot, diameter trees that are laying on their sides. Hundreds and hundreds of them. I mean, it's almost impassable.
yeah.
Just because of.
They get too big, they either freeze and snap or they fall over and,
Okay.
I mean, there's some crazy stuff that happens up there. Sometimes you don't want to be up there.
But I almost misplaced these notes from Richard. I just found them this morning in my briefcase. So I was, when he gave them to me, he actually gave me his notes. I said, hey, I'd like to get those numbers. And he just said, here you go. Here's my notes. So I took just the notes, but I wanted to make sure I reported on that. And again, I think UMRA just does fantastic work.
Yeah. I think they're doing great work, and but as Jeff said, this is super important. And I think we've seen several fires that didn't get out of hand because of this. I think
Yeah.
the Tiger Creek fire is an example, just a couple weeks ago. And
Well,
then,
Yeah, there's a great
it's a
new,
good example.
I'm sorry, there's a great new dashboard. I'm not sure, I've seen it, and it's kind of, now it's quantifying like the impacts of a fire going through a fuels reduction project as opposed to not. And they're starting to now give that kind of some context and some numbers saying, okay, this one acted like this because, this was thinned X amount of years ago. And it's pretty interesting.
It'd be interesting right now. They got, because I think I read today where there's, I don't know, I forget how many little spot fires from the lightning strikes and everything that are still going on to the smolder. And we were golfing the other day. We're golfing in the rain. It's lightning all around us. They're in Truckee. And then the next day, there's helicopters flying with buckets, going to those little spots. It would be interesting to know, if any of those lightning strikes hit in our rehab areas and the difference, But I think there'll be that kind of stuff coming up. But I think there's lightning up there today here as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So these cost estimates and the 45 million acres, that's California.
Yes, this is, and he did mention that it was a little bit difficult of a task to find exact numbers.
Yeah.
But this is kind of that start of starting to quantify it. But yes, California. So a few upcoming events, this Friday, the engineering team is going to be having a kind of a more, a specific construction meeting for the A to B project up on Wind River there. Just mainly for those, folks that live along Wind River Court, because they're going to be there with this A to B project here shortly. So, Kevin and his team are going to go up there with a little pop-up tent right there at the B tank site and just be there for questions and answers. The contractor will be there also just to kind of communicate with the folks there, the impacts that they can expect. So that's going to be happening on Friday from 12 to 1. This Saturday, it's kind of funny that I have pictures of Christmas trees, but this was the only really sign of copperopolis I had at the moment, but maybe some of us here in the office think it's never too soon to be ready for Christmas.
I was gonna say, somebody had to be first.
So, yeah, so then same thing, the Poker Flat HOA, their annual meeting is going to be Saturday, August 30th. I believe that's from 9 to 11 or 9 to 12. So we'll be there. And that's the rest of my report, or the end of my report. But I did want to ask the board one thing of, what would you guys like to see from the external affairs, either reports or just engagement with the community? I mean, is there any items that come to your guys' mind that you'd like this department to be working on and to be more proactive with, to do more of or less of? Is there anything that comes to mind that you guys would like?
I'm brand new to this board, but it seems like you're hustling. So I can't imagine, I can't think of anything you're not already trying.
It even, I mean, just, it frustrates me. I mean, I understand what the grand jury was trying to do, but, I just don't think they really, compared to what other agency that you know of, and I know you know a lot of agency, but who's doing this much? Nobody.
Nobody's.
Yeah.
That's good. It's good work.
And thanks for saying that. I mean, I appreciate what the grand jury, the report too. I mean, I think sometimes that's hard, but it makes us better. It makes us conscious of what's, and that will drive us to be even better. And I do stand behind what we did during that time. In some ways, we might have communicated too much, which actually kind of, raised the flag. But I still think it's important for us to push through that and continue to communicate what we do, what it costs to serve the community, and really how amazing this infrastructure is and what it does for the community. So even though it's hard sometimes, I think we just got to keep pushing through that and just continual education on what it takes to have that water just squirt out of your faucet.
Well, I think that your road show that you've been putting on is great. People in this county love the history, and it ties them to what we're doing. So it invests our community in our projects, which is pretty cool.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah, two things. One is, if I recall, looking through the report back to the response, the board response to the grand jury, may be worth noting because they had suggested we go out and do more of the kind of thing you're doing. I didn't see the Facebook and LinkedIn statistics. I mean, that might make them feel good as though, gee, at their suggestion, we've done more. I don't know if it's worth adding as an addendum.
If you read, as you notice in there too, I try to stay away from going down the social media rabbit hole. I mean, social media is a very, very useful tool, but it's really not, I don't think the most ideal tool. It's a good way to get information out there, but some of these boards become, they go off track, and so, and we're not.
It only takes one sideways comment to.
Right. And we're not, and I even have a hard time sometimes. I don't really feel comfortable showcasing our metrics. Like, okay, we're not a marketing company. We're not trying to, sell the latest shoes and stuff. I'm just trying to show that to say, hey, this is a tool and we're gradually improving and increasing. And by getting followers, I didn't show all the stats, but a huge amount of people that are seeing it are actually non-followers. So that's just telling me, at least the information's getting out there. At least with the National Hydropower Association, that National Hydropower Day, hopefully even if I got to 1 or 2 people, that makes them think that these hydro projects have, lots of benefits like recreation, things they might not think of. You go jump on a lake with your paddleboard and go, oh, I love it up here, but this is all part of the bigger infrastructure and it's part of our water storage and part of our community. So I tried to stay away because in the original grand jury report, they mentioned the social media outcry, but most likely people are going to go on social media and say the not so positive things instead of saying, hey, I love this. This is great. You guys are doing a good job. We do get a few of those, but.
Right. Anything else?
Yeah,
Yeah, just one more thing. I do think that, I mean, your presentations are so good, and I think if we get, you do Rotary and you've got 30 people there, but I think that there, you know, we could do something with the public now, maybe in the park with a laser projector and where you could do, there's a much larger audience, I think, that would love to see it. I'm not quite sure how we could do it, but.
Well, I'm ready, you know, and I think even doing these smaller ones that'll grow, the word will get out, but I'm ready.
County library, maybe another
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, one thing we're working on too, I was gonna save this, but Martha Rubin, who's been very instrumental in all the Firewise events and the winter preparedness, she's trying to start a show. And so she's working with the public access TV. And she had asked, she wanted to do an interview on where our water comes from, the watersheds. And I said, absolutely. However, I was concerned. I just didn't want it to be like typical public access kind of, I don't know if you guys have seen Between Two Ferns, but kind of the spoof on public access. I said, I'd be more than happy to do it, but I want to, let's get out in the system. Let me show you where this water comes from. Let's really make this impactful and inspirational. And so we did our first set of filming last week on the 15th. So I took them up into that watershed. You know, I showed them where this water really starts. And they were just both, you know, they saw things they've never seen, and it was amazing. And if we can get that into the community, I think it's going to be impactful.
I don't want to beat this up, but there's also, you know, you might, Kelly, as you're looking for venues, speaking with the middle schools and the high schools, because there's things like Nature Bowl, where people are talking about watersheds and trying to get kids involved in where this all comes from. With the information you're offering, I would imagine would be pretty interesting. I'm not quite sure how to plug into that.
No, absolutely. We've
but
kind of
That's be interesting.
We've kind of helped with the trout in the classroom. I'm sure you've heard of that one. We've kind of worked with that. And then also a gentleman from Bret Harte just reached out. He's trying to do some college courses on water management and watershed health for some of the high school kids to start getting some of those college credentials. He reached out to me just last week. And because I've gone to all the job fairs and the On the Right Track, I've reported that here too. And those are great avenues. And, you know, I think it's great to teach the future,
Right.
you know, adults also what goes into the systems.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to make one comment about that gentleman named, I didn't get his last name, but Rob with Mazingo. He just captivated the whole group there. What a great down-to-earth presentation. It was very obvious how dedicated he is to working with the concerns of the community when they have to block off their streets and they have to go around a different way. I don't, you might consider doing a little Q&A with him and put it in at the, maybe not a Q&A in your office, but next time you have a town hall that concerns like an AB transmission line or Copper Cove blocking streets and stuff, town hall, record his comments if Mazingo is a low bidder. See, he was a star.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I agree. I mean, that whole flow just worked out so good. Everybody, it just worked out nice and smooth. I wish I could let you guys hear the voicemail that I got from somebody after that, just saying how informative it was and very appreciative of it. And, you know, he was, I mean, he kind of stole the show in my eyes. Because it's also, they're hearing it from a different person. Sometimes I feel that, you know, us, the CCWD staff can say something and then somebody else says it, even the same thing, and they hear it differently, you know, like, oh, okay. So yeah, he was fantastic. And so that really complimented that.
It was very unanticipated, even as long as I've been involved in construction. You have this, I don't know, an image of a construction foreman as, you know, let's get out here and do stuff. And the fact that he said that every day starts with a discussion about what are we going to accomplish today? What are our objectives? You know, what are anticipated problems? Every day they do that. It's not, and they're great. The sensitivity that he expressed there was the most important thing to me and most of the people in the room, I think. So
yeah, I think we're lucky to have Mazingo on board.
Yeah.
I worked with Mazingo on some of those projects up in the past, and they're great, in my opinion.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
are you going to do the closed sessions?
Yeah. Okay, let's finish the meeting before we go to close. Michael, you still with us?
Still here, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we have the?
I'm going to give a very brief report because I suspect, people don't want to listen to me on the road for a long time. This has been great. Kelly and Damon both gave such great presentations. I feel like Kelly mentioned a podcast earlier. I feel like I've been listening to a podcast for the last hour in the car, all about CCWD podcasts. It's been really good, really interesting stuff. But like I said, I'm on my way back from the California Special Districts Association conference. Really productive couple of days, both in educational panels, but also meeting with some of our partner agencies, and some really productive meetings this morning with our financial advisor. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll give a more extended GM report at the next board meeting, and I'll keep this one short. But feel free to let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions? Any questions? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to board reports, information, future agenda items. Jeff, do you have anything?
No, just that we have requested staff to come up with some, to propose some possible solutions or ways to deal with people who really are poverty stricken and can't afford the connection fees. Is really. And then we'll report back to the finance committee and then we'll bring it to the board.
Connection fees?
Well, the bi-monthly service fees.
Okay, capacity fees are when you build a house or connection fee.
Right. Not, yeah, I understood. I misspoke there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the bi-monthly fees.
All right. I mean, there's legislation out there that's moving, but it's currently we're not allowed to do that, but we certainly would have a desire to do so, but there is legislation out there being talked about, but it's not, we just had a legal affairs committee. Did they, well, I don't want to get into too much discussion, but there is stuff out there that's being done, but, okay, anything else?
No.
Jack?
Nothing.
Russ?
Nothing.
I have nothing really to report. We will move on. Our next board meeting is September 10th at 1 p.m. We're going to adjourn to closed session, 88 Government Code 549-576, agency negotiators, General Manager Michael Minkler, HR Stacy Waller, negotiation of employee union SEI 1021, 8B, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, 8C, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. Is there any public comment regarding our closed session?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
we have moved the September 24th meeting to the 23rd.
Yes,
Okay.
So
that's a 9 o'clock meeting.
Oh, okay.
it's 9 a.m.
All right. Okay, then we will adjourn into closed session.